It's time someone had the courage to stand up and say, I'm against those things that everybody hates. Now, I respect my opponent. I think he's a good man, but quite frankly, I agree with everything he just said.
These are the candidates? They sound like clones. Wait a minute. They are clones.
Don't let their identical DNA fool you. They differ on some key issues.
I say your 3-cent titanium tax goes too far. And I say your 3-cent titanium tax doesn't go too far enough.
Not all of us can be H3H3.
Trying way too hard to
right? You're rolling. That's how it goes. Yes.
We started?
Yeah.
All right.
Per usual.
All right, here we are.
Once again.
Do you want to introduce us?
Here we are once again.
Usually we don't introduce it till like 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in.
Yeah. We start off with just a stupid joke, but...
Well, now we're in like good company. So now we have to like behave.
We have to behave ourselves.
No.
I'll get it started and we can get the guest to introduce himself here.
If the guest isn't choking his water.
He forgot to drink water.
That's great podcast
Yeah,
stuff.
see,
that'll be
there
your
you
intro.
There you go.
It's awesome.
Welcome to the...
Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast, where we bring pop culture to the pit.
Yeah. That's our tagline.
Yeah,
what do
that's
you
our
think?
tagline.
Objectively, how do you feel about that, Mr. Bears? Can we call you Dan?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Nice.
You're graduated.
All right.
You're graduated.
Yeah, I like
That's
it.
cool with me.
Nice.
I think I'm still going to say Mr. Bears.
That's good. That's good. It makes me feel more comfortable, Anna.
Okay.
Mr.
So,
Bears.
yeah, I'm Mr. B. I'm a teacher at Eastbrook, and Zach was one of my students.
Yeah.
And through Zach, I've got to know his family and Josh and their friend Phil and everybody else.
Yep.
So,
and he just decided to hang out with us after we forced him to be on our podcast.
no, not at all.
We're super huge. This is a great
into the
investment into
madness.
your show because we'll plug it.
Yeah.
Which you have your own podcast, which is...
I do. It was Cubic Shenanigans.
Nice.
Yep, we do a lot of, it's mostly Warhammer stuff, which is miniatures gaming, things like that. We do talk some board gaming and those kind of things, but that's what it is. So
Nice.
it's a little bit of a niche kind of podcast, but we get a pretty good following and
Nice.
have fun doing it.
Good deal.
That's what it's all about.
Nice.
Awesome.
It
I do
is.
have a funny memory. I think the first time you and I officially met was doing the scoreboard at Eastbrook basketball games. And I just
we still
remember
do that.
the chaos, like, that was just nuts.
That's
oh my
so
goodness.
true. Yep.
It's like, wait, do we count that free throw? How many timeouts do they have left? It's just like,
Who made that shot? I have no
I
clue.
don't know.
Pick a number.
right? Yeah. I think it was 12. 12 looks like a shooter, doesn't he?
It's just-
No, wait,
true.
he's licking his elbow. He did.
we won't let Miss Marty know we're having
Yeah,
this
exactly.
conversation,
Right.
right? Oh, gosh.
She'd be like, I knew it. Oh my
That's
goodness.
good.
Games at that school were... How's the team been recently?
They were really good last year. I think they won conference last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Pretty sure.
Nice.
That's
Yeah,
impressive.
they did really, really
Reppin'.
well. Yeah.
Good deal.
Last year, the year before, they won conference. So a lot of seniors graduating this year, but a couple of really good freshmen coming up,
Nice.
and a couple of people coming in that I know of from 8th grade.
Nice.
So they should have a good team again still.
That's
Cool.
good.
I think
I remember
so.
when I left, it was like we were kind of in shambles.
Yeah, there.
In terms of like, we just didn't have... I don't think really like only 6 or 7 people.
Yeah,
it was
and
very
they still
small.
had, I think at one point we only had like 5 players come out for a game one time, but then they were up to 8 or 9. So
That's good.
of course that sounds really great. You feel really good about that until you get another team that comes in with like 15 players.
Right.
When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
play all
Cheers
those
for
public
them.
schools that have like literally they need extra seats for their players.
Exactly. 20.
Eastbrook's
Nice.
it's a small school.
Much love. Reppin'.
Represent.
That Warrior
Much
life.
love.
Much
I
love.
didn't go there, but
That's okay.
You
You,
send-
you,
you send your
attended,
love.
you attended my wedding there, so you're like doctored in.
yeah,
Your grandfather
I've been
in?
grafted in.
Grafted in?
Yeah.
That's
They
more
carved your
biblical.
name out on the
Yeah, no, they didn't. I did.
What? Wait, what?
Oh, wait.
We're not doing that for the pod. You don't do anything.
Wait, what? I don't do anything.
Just
Like, just be
run with
quiet.
it. Just,
I like how you
just
got
stop.
you were like, wait, I don't do anything.
Because I was taking a drink of my beer. So yeah,
Yeah, this is our podcast.
You're along for quite the ride.
That's
Yes.
okay.
So a guest this week who already introduced himself. These guys kind of know you, but I don't fully know you, so I'm interested in what your pop culture background is. Is it mostly miniatures or?
Well, it's miniatures, and I'm a console gamer, and I'm a board gamer, and being a teacher, I have to deal with pop culture all the time because I learn every year. I learn the newest thing that's come out.
How do you feel about Fortnite?
No,
Thank you.
that's the first time I heard about it, I was like, well, that's interesting. And then when I started hearing about people like upgrading, like, oh, what are they doing? Getting new weapons? No, they're getting a dance move. I'm going, okay, no, I don't even want to worry. That just sounds sad. It just sounds super sad.
That's funny.
Too many kids are playing that game these days. It's a little.
I'll pull your mic back just a little bit.
It's a little out of hand.
Perfect.
Yeah. The other thing it reminded me of was, I don't know if you guys watch Black Mirror at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about that this morning. Yeah.
So I remember there was an episode, and this is what Fortnite reminded me of, where everybody kind of rode a bike, like it generated electricity.
Yeah.
And it was thinking of, that's how they made their currency. And everybody, the way they spent their currency was upgrading their avatars. And that was them. Like their avatar was them.
Yep.
And it was just sick. And then I finished the episode going, wow, that's like us.
That's kind of where we're going.
These kids with Fortnite.
But then when I heard about Fortnite, it made me think exactly of that.
Interesting.
That is the person, and to think of, it's kind of sad to me to think that some of these people who play Fortnite, God bless them all, but some of them think, that's their self-esteem. When you think about that,
Well,
that's kind of spooky.
Interesting.
And that's why they upgrade themselves, because they want to feel better about themselves, because that is their kind of alter ego.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's part of why I think microtransactions make so much money, is because it's another way of self-expression within a virtual world.
Right,
So
identifying
that's
yourself with
interesting.
that.
Definitely.
I never thought about it that way,
For
but
sure.
that's wow.
Well, that's what Gloria said teaching, is that she had students where they would come in at lunch and there was one kid who's like stupid good, and she, being objective, was like, a kid you'd probably peg as like not super social, not going to be the most popular person in the world, but then because he's stupid good at Fortnite, everyone's like, oh, like David's like stupid good, and like he's the kid, and it's very interesting how like what happens then when
There's been such a huge shift.
it
We kind of
drops.
talked about that in the last episode too, with I said with anime and manga, like it's so much more mainstream than it was before. And I think video games too.
Yep.
Like you look at all the movie stars and celebrities, as soon as they play like Fortnite or play some popular video game, everyone is like praising them to high end, which is interesting. Because back in the day, that was definitely not the case.
It's interesting too to me. D&D, Dungeons and Dragons now is it's becoming very mainstream when you think about the people who play it. And Critical Role obviously had a huge effect on that, because they've really allowed access for a lot of people to know what it's about and what it does. But there are so many people that I would never have believed that play it now. I would bet you hundreds of times more people total now play D&D than they did way back in ancient times when I was playing it as a young person.
Did you play like the OG?
Oh my
D&D
gosh!
back in the day?
It was, my friend had from Flying Buffalo, which was the first publisher. He had the original 3 books in this box, and I can still remember. I was at the Naval Academy, and he called me over. We were in different parts of the dorm, of the big giant dorm there. There's 4,000 of us living all in one building, and he called me over and said, "Hey, there's this new cool thing I got. Would you like to give it a try?" It's like, oh, okay. I didn't know what it was, and I'm going, this is amazing. All the pictures are all hand drawn and stuff like that. That was my introduction to D&D.
Yeah, nice.
But it's just come so far, and again, it's mainstream now as well.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still maintained the same level of like?
I think way
authenticity
past
as it
it.
did?
I really do.
That's
I think
good.
fifth ed, which is what it's running now at 5th edition, I think is very, very good. In fact, speaking of which, we had 2 groups this past year. I had 2 groups of kids at Eastbrook we were playing.
Nice.
Which was really cool.
That's awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, we had a group of 4 and a group of 3.
Nice.
I feel like
And
that's
that was really fun.
I've never gotten to play it, but I feel like it's a good way of getting people to express like creativity and critical thinking and different stuff like that.
It really
So
is. It really is.
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
But I've heard sometimes people get a little too creative with D&D.
It's like he won't mind that I say this. Is like Jacob, Weitzer. He's the guy. He's always the guy who tries to break the game.
Nice.
It's always fun.
Like crash the code,
He
baby.
is.
Let's go. Yeah.
So if I play D&D with him as a dungeon master, I'd have just lock him down because he would just go way out there.
That's fun.
I feel like
Awesome.
that's probably how I would play it.
Cool. So you said you're a console gamer. So what would you say are like your top 5 games?
Skyrim.
All right.
All right,
Done.
I still need to play that.
I remember because we took our exam that one time and you played the soundtrack while we...
Oh, I still do.
That's great.
I love Skyrim. I think Skyrim's big Halo 4.
Interesting.
When the chief was resurrected.
Sure.
And, what's her name?
Cortana.
Cortana.
Yeah.
You know, it was basically a story about the two of them and their relationship, but to me.
Yeah.
And I love games that have that kind of story.
Sure.
If it's just the game and shooty, first person stuff, FPS, it's boring to me. But having that backstory, because that moves you through the game in a really cool way. Because then, to me, the gameplay is just secondary if it's a really good story like that. So
Sure.
Fallout 4 or Halo 4 would be one. Fallout.
That's your boy
talking
right
about
there.
Which
Which
Fallout?
Fallout? Just in general?
New Vegas.
Ooh, it's a good one.
And I never played it on console before. Somebody said I should try it. That was pretty good. I liked it. So I don't know that I have more because I'm not a big console player. I'm a much bigger PC gamer.
Sure.
But if those would probably be my top 3 that I played. I still play Skyrim.
I mean,
but the other ones,
there's people who on the internet have like thousands of hours and just like there's so much stuff to explore.
Because
It's
especially with the
crazy.
modding now too, that they've been able to do that. It's like they just test the limits.
Yep.
For sure.
When I had played it on the PC before, there wasn't modding. And then when
Yeah.
I started playing it recently, I started playing it like late spring, early summer. Again, I'd never played it. I played it on the console. It was like, oh, this is really cool. All these mods.
Definitely.
And
You have to
they're releasing like huge like otherworldly mods and stuff, like
Yes.
whole other storylines and stuff, which is insane.
Which
So,
is very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I just love that.
You're going to have to remind me, what was the director of the movie of Kingdom of Heaven that you're a huge fan of? Because you're
Ridley
big,
Scott.
Ridley Scott, that's who it was.
Yeah, my first Scott movie was Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner.
yeah, that was
Yes.
the
Yeah, but I'm really still big on Ridley Scott. He did Black Hawk Down and Kingdom of Heaven. He's done a lot of movies.
Did he
Nice.
do the Alien movies or was that somebody else?
He did one of them.
One of them.
He didn't do them all, yeah.
Didn't you do like the very first one?
I believe so.
Okay.
Nice.
What'd you think? Did you see 2049?
I loved it.
Loved it?
Loved it. Seen
Good.
it. I don't want to say how many times.
That's awesome.
I still need
I
to
saw
watch
it like
it again.
3 times in the theater, and I watched it a few more times at home.
Sure.
No shame. No
Yeah.
shame.
Nice.
No, that's awesome.
It was very good.
I'm always curious because I know I went to see it by myself actually because it was like the week before
Same.
they pulled it from theaters
Wow.
because it wasn't doing well. So I'm curious. Obviously, like we're a little biased because we like sci-fi and I love cyberpunk stuff.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this one that maybe didn't resonate with like mainstream audiences, or like maybe it was misguided expectations, or just
I think when you
not knowing the movie?
That's a great question, Josh, because I think whenever you have a sequel that I think requires you to see the previous movie to understand. If you didn't have the context of the original, then you wouldn't understand, for example, the relationship between Deckard and Rachel and how important that was in this movie, in the new movie. You wouldn't understand the relationship between humans and replicants. It would make it, I think it would make it more difficult to understand the story.
Sure.
So I think probably that's one reason that it's different to me than say Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings is very self-contained. If you didn't read the book or anything, it's a self-contained story. So when you saw the next movie, I mean, you had to see them all to understand. If all you watched, it'd be a good example. If you had to watch Return of the King, you hadn't seen the other 2 movies, you'd be going, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, you're like, it's dumb.
And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like
Who's
that,
that?
I think.
Sure.
I think that's probably one
Sure.
reason.
Interesting.
Yeah. The music was unbelievable.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
even though it wasn't Vangelis, that's another thing. I play that soundtrack all the time. I love that.
Awesome. Well, one more question, then we can jump into. We're doing a Tilt Brigade episode,
Yes,
which
I saw that.
I don't.
That's
Yes,
very
this
cool.
is-
No, this is I think this is my first official
yeah,
one
this
too,
is.
right?
So we have never done a Tilt Brigade episode with him on it because he's like,
cool.
I don't have any controversial opinions.
I don't
have any conflict.
I really
It's
don't.
good.
I was even just saying on
This
our
was
last
really
episode
fun.
that like there's this one anime show that people have you heard of Fooly Cooley before?
No, I have not.
Very good show, but originally when I first watched it, I didn't like it that much. And that was like my only tilting opinion I had, was that like it's known as like one of the best anime shows, and I was like, it was okay. Like I didn't really like it, and then everyone was like, how dare you? But then I rewatched it with this dub, and like the English voice actors did almost a better job than the Japanese voice actors, I would say. And it made it so much better. And then I was like, okay, the only tilting opinion I had has been thrown out the window. So maybe I'll think of something in the future.
So this will be an easy one. My last question was, are there any, we just came off of E3, and I know there's some other movies coming out in the near future, and then like, I don't know if you're how into Marvel and stuff you are, but are there any video games or movies coming out soon that you're really excited for?
Well, one of the things when you asked me about console games, Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I played all the way through that, and I understand that. So that, I guess that'd be number 4 on my list. There is another one. I'm understanding they're making a movie of Witcher, and that would be amazing.
Yeah,
I would
love.
love.
It's a TV show, I think. Netflix.
Yeah, maybe it
working
is.
on
Yeah, and that looks like that would be incredible. I read a book called Altered Carbon.
Oh, did you watch the show?
I've even got Mrs. B. We were the first time I said, you got to watch this. It's pretty interesting. It's like she's really into murder mysteries.
Sure.
Like more futuristic ones. But I said, you would like this because of that. She watched it, and she's like, can we watch another one?
That's awesome.
And then by the time we finished, we'd watch like 4 in one evening.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good.
It was a really good show.
It's always fun getting a loved one into something you like.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I know the next... what's the movie coming out end of the month? The next Mission Impossible's coming out, and people have various opinions about those movies, except for the second one. I thought they were all great. Really good story, interesting.
I don't think
story.
I've ever seen any of them.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll have to
and you
try
kind of
them
start
out.
with the first one to understand who Ethan is, and
Yeah.
those kind of thing. Ethan Hunt, but those are really great. So other than that, I don't know that I have. You asked me this question, you kind of caught me off guard.
Have you seen anything? So the developers of The Witcher 3 are creating a new game called Cyberpunk 2077, which is kind of like Witcher, but in like a cyberpunk setting. I think it's first person too.
Yeah, first person.
I have not
shooter.
seen that.
They've
I'll
been
have to look
developing it
that.
for like 5 or 6 years, and it's got like 2 or 3 more to go. So it's going to be massive.
Well, I'll put that in my notes to keep an eye on it.
So
Yeah, they
we're
literally-
super excited about that.
Because they had like a very brief 30-second trailer when they first launched the game, and it was like very dark and gritty and very Blade Runner kind of imagery. But then this one, all of a sudden, it's like the trailer is like in the day, but there's still neon colors, and it's the premise that they've given so far is that it's based in a futuristic California. It's the most dangerous city in the world, and you play like basically there is no law. It's just kind of like street rules, and the corporations are in charge, and you just play as this like mercenary in like a cyberpunk setting.
Yeah, you're
Oh, very cool.
It sounds right up your alley.
So very sandbox, very
It's what it
open.
sounds like.
It's like old school role playing game
Oh,
style, because
okay.
it's based
Yep.
off of the old like tabletop cyberpunk game actually.
And anything
So-
dystopian, I enjoy a
yeah.
lot, which
Yeah.
is the Blade
We're
Runner
like
type
kindred
of thing.
spirits right here.
Yeah, you see, I knew. I was like, this will be great. Yeah,
That's kind of our
this
consensus, is like that's our favorite kind of storytelling is through those kind of settings.
Yeah, it's so great.
yeah, but
So
it's
you should check it out. It's
I don't know if I said this last episode or 2 episodes ago, but I listened to an interview that this other podcast was doing, and they did a closed door demo to like maybe like a few hundred people, like very small, didn't show any gameplay. There's been no leaked footage of it or anything. But everyone who walked out of the room was like, this may be the greatest RPG that has ever been made. Like that's like unanimously the consensus. So they were saying like, one example they gave is in the beginning of the game when you start, you have no HUD. Like there's no like bullets. You don't see how like your clip. You don't have like a reticle or anything. That's it. But then later in the demo, the person gets like an eye enhancement upgrade, and all of a sudden then you can see the clip, and then you can see like a reticle, and like
That's good.
so it's things like that where I was like, that's gonna be a lot of fun.
It is
like-
interesting to see that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's interesting to see because that reminded me of like one of the reasons why I loved, the new Zelda game that came out. Everyone was like, I was fawning over it because I'm a huge Zelda fan, but like Breath of the Wild had a great introduction too, and I think that's how those kind of games should function, and that's what makes them interesting from the get-go, is you're thrown into that kind of world with really no specific guidance, but then like as you start forming kind of your own, like, okay, this is how this works, okay, this is how this functions, then it's better to almost have a slow start and a gradual like kind of opening of the gates to what the world has, and then like rather than just like they kind of plop you down in the middle of a conflict. They're like, all right, go for it, have fun.
I think when you talk about, and later in the game they had this enhancement, I think that also, one of the things I love about this is dystopian stories always bring up a lot of ethical questions.
Yeah, definitely.
But in this case, you think about the fact that I'd never do that. I'd never make an implant into my body. That's just terrible to think about. But then you see this game and it's like, you
really
can't
cool.
survive without the implants. So do you take the implant or do you die?
Yep.
But now that forces you to make that decision as a player even. It's kind of neat.
For sure.
I'm
Definitely.
excited.
Cool. Yeah.
I saw them. They said that the gameplay that they released, that was just like pre-alpha too.
Yeah.
So
it's
like
not
the
even...
fact that the pre-alpha cut is like getting that reception is like,
That's impressive.
Did they give it a release date or anything?
No.
A rough?
They said
just
they said
early?
at least in the next couple of years, so probably not at least till
Well,
2020.
I heard speculation that people are betting holiday next year.
Well, they said that it's still in pre-alpha, so they haven't even gotten to the alpha stage yet, which people have said suggests that probably not 2020 till at least.
Which would be
game of that size,
that's what I'm hoping. I'm just like,
nice.
It's one of those things where I'm just like, just keep rolling with it. Like, give it to us when it's done. Like,
absolutely. Cool.
There's too many games out here now that are like people have been waiting years for, and just the wait just gets, and the anxiety gets just worse and worse.
Yeah.
True that.
All
right, Philip, you want to take us on this ride?
Yeah, like Josh said
getting
before, we're doing a Tilt Brigade episode. As always, to give a little disclosure. If you're faint of heart or you have thin skin, don't listen to this because we might trigger you and
make you mad.
Send you off the rails. So
I will make you mad.
That's great.
Zach will keep it posy for us.
I'll try.
Posy, baby.
So yeah,
What if I get triggered?
That'd be a sight to see.
That's kind of
right. Yeah. It's the downfall of society right there.
I just like start crying, like run out of the... Guys, let's just stop the podcast.
Just leave the room, please.
Yeah.
That's funny.
There's a Dimitri Martin joke about that where he's talking about pillow fights and he's like, pillow fight, like guy versus girl, cute. He's like, girl versus girl, hot. He's like, pillow versus pillow. He's like, I don't know. He's like, if pillows are fighting, like, what hope do we have? So, he's like, they're the ultimate form of comfort. Anyway,
Good
That's great.
stuff.
So yeah, we're doing Tilt Brigade. I don't know who wants to kick us off. I'm like Zach. I don't have a ton of tilting opinions, that I have not said.
I have like a funny one. I'll start.
So you can start off.
So
with
I
the
saw
humor.
Incredibles 2 like opening night. It was like Thursday night, and it was, first off, it was phenomenal. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. I cannot stand Greg Marcus. Oh my lord,
the guy.
that dude in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
To give a little reference to that.
Okay, yeah, tilting opinion. I hate that guy.
I do. Okay. For those of you that don't live anywhere near a Marcus Theater, so there's a chain of theaters in the Midwest area, and I think in like Colorado or
I
something
think
like
it's
that.
everywhere.
Yeah, Marcus Theaters.
They have them in Cali.
And before most movies, we get a nice introduction from the head of the company.
I'm Greg Marcus.
I'm Greg Marcus. What did he do?
Oh,
the opera one recently?
Oh yeah,
That one is
He does-
that one's
sad.
bad.
You want to
does-
cry for him. It's so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does just these really kitschy, corny introductions to like, we appreciate you coming to the theater, which is always like, that's nice, but he's like recently been trying really, really hard to be funny.
He pulled like the Steve
Something?
Buscemi, like, hello, my fellow fun friends. Hey, you're like, you're just
and he's not
awkward.
even doing it ironically.
Yeah,
the,
no,
the
like-
film, I think the worst one
that
was
one
the
made
film
me
one.
so mad. I don't know if you remember that one, Mr. Bears, but he's like, yeah, I went to film school and blah blah blah, and he's like, can we cut to a 4:3 with this? And he's just like lists off a whole bunch of technical stuff to basically reframe the shot. It just was like, you're not impressive. You're not a good actor.
And he's like, that was
Or-
a blank cut.
Yeah, you're like, that was a bad cut. You're like, no Smurf. Yeah.
And
So I
since
can't
he's
stand
the
that
head
guy.
of the company, nobody has the nerve to tell him, you know what, Greg, you need to stop.
Yeah, like, Greg, you're ruining our sales. People aren't coming to movies anymore.
Yeah,
They just
little
get
do
like
we
a whole
know.
rally going of like, we need Greg Marcus out of here.
Start a
Right?
petition. Get rid of Greg Marcus.
Oh my gosh. No, I
That's
actually I agree
great.
with that. I think that's not a tilting opinion. I think the
I
world
don't. Yeah,
agrees.
I think it's more tilting to actually say it verbally and own
Yeah,
it.
nobody has said it yet.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's yours.
'cause, I mean, I remember the funny ones where it was like Clay Matthews, or who was the other guy? I think at one point where it was like a guy on his phone, he's being obnoxious. He's like, yeah, Cindy, you know that's totally crazy. And then he like comes up and he literally like smacks him in the head.
I remember that.
And then he's like, oh, and
He's like, when
that.
you're in the movie theater, like, please turn off your phone and blah, blah, blah. And then he just walks out.
And so like I remember
Yeah.
when they were running that one, people would like cheer. They'd be like, yeah. I don't know why.
But now he's trying too hard.
and then now it's just Greg Marcus, and
Yep.
he's like an old rich guy with too much too much time and too much money.
Yeah.
Trying
Well,
to
it's
have
almost
fun.
a thing of like people are probably ironically being like, "Yeah, Greg Marcus," and he's like, "Oh, they really like me. Hi, I'm Greg Marcus." Does the opera video, and you're like, "Oh, buddy,
Oh, Greg Marcus.
you're trying too hard."
I don't know what you'd replace him with. Or if
Nothing.
you should just
get
go
rid
to the
of it.
movie.
We had a
Nothing,
pre.
yeah.
There was a pre-Greg Marcus era where we had nothing and it was fine.
We did
It was
okay.
good.
We lived. We survived.
I went to
We were
go
all
see.
right.
They were replaying Studio Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
And I went to go see Porco
Yeah.
Rosso, and like I was upset because they were playing like all these previews and stuff beforehand. When we went to go see Dragon Ball Z in the movie theater.
That was dope.
When they have those special cases, sometimes it's literally like you just sit down. They show like the logo for the animation company, and then it starts.
Yeah,
That's
it's
how it should be.
15. I've timed it. It's like 15 to 17 minutes now.
Yeah.
From the time things start to the time the movie starts. It's good.
Ridiculous.
It's singing
Oh,
like,
it drives me
getting
nuts.
so long,
yeah,
yeah.
I can't deal with that. But anyway, Greg Marcus.
So Greg
I
Marcus
absolutely
trash.
agree.
He's a Trump.
Yeah.
Trump.
Trump.
Whoops.
He's a
Change.
Trump.
Rescind that. I don't want to be on any lists. Anyway.
How dare you compare me to Greg Marcus? We are not the same person.
Oh, no, not at all.
That's hilarious.
I may put on an opera hat sometimes, but that's just for fun.
I would love to see the next presidential address like that. Hi, I'm Donald Trump. Thanks for listening.
I was watching these
I'd do it.
YouTubers. I think I mentioned Oni Plays before on the show. They joked about like, they always do hypothetical jokes, and he was like, "What if?" Because they were playing Crash Bandicoot. He's like, "What if he just came out with like the Aku Aku mask and just did like gave his speech and then ended with like a ooga booga."
Just like runs off.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. I'd be down.
I would too. I'd gain much more respect for it.
As if, yeah. Anyway,
That's great.
that's too tilty. We won't.
That's
we
great.
won't go there.
That's great.
I don't know if.
I mean, if any president
when-
put on an Aku Aku mask, I'd.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do we got here? Oh, the salad rant.
The salad rant.
Let's be clear.
Yeah, what's up with salad?
So
Oh boy.
what's up with that? What's up with that?
Salad.
Salad. Who eats
So-
salad?
Tomatoes in the salad.
So my wife made me a salad one day, and she was like, I was like, oh, I'll eat this. And she's
If
like,
this
you
is
know
a
why?
marital thing, let's not get into
No. It's like, no, it's more a commentary on salads as a social construct. So we're going to get deep on salads.
Oh, wow.
So
Jeez.
she made me, like, we had like chicken and salad for dinner, and she was like, this is why I know you'd eat this. It's in a giant metal bowl. There's meat in it, and there's like some lettuce. And I was like, yes. Like, this
It's a
is why I would
sandwich
eat this.
without bread. That's
it's
what
a
a salad
sandwich
should
without
be.
bread with
Nicely
extra
done.
lettuce.
Yep.
So I was thinking about it the other day, and we were talking about it, and I always find it funny that one of the reasons I also hate salad is the leaves are like not a contained, like they're just floppy, and you
They
have
don't
dressing
hold
on
sauce.
it. They don't hold sauce. It's just soggy, and it's like flying everywhere. And so if you put it in your mouth, but there's like a leaf hanging off, and you like just like nicks you in the face, and there's like salad dressing everywhere. And so I was like, I find it fascinating that salads are the things that at like a fancy dinner, it's like, and the pre-dinner salad, and it's like, why are you giving me the thing that's gonna like get red French sauce all over my tux? Like, this is stupid.
I'm imagining
Why do
like,
we do this?
like those commercials for like products. They're like, ever have trouble using normal scissors, and they're cuts to like a gray scene, and they're like, I'm imagining you like, ever have trouble eating salad, pans to you like, just like throwing leaves everywhere, just like leaves flying and sauce everywhere.
That's how I feel.
I just can't eat my salad. What's up with that?
I love to toss this salad over my shoulder.
Hey-o.
Oh
Sorry, I'll pay for that. It's like,
That's
no,
hilarious.
so I was just like, I don't like. Is there a historical thing behind that? Is that just what? Like, I don't know.
I think the solution should just be to get rid of salad.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is we
No
just,
salad.
Just
There,
no salad.
it's too late. There are too many health nuts that have infested the.
It's truth. That is true.
Like at Collectivo, we started serving the worst thing to make at that at the cafe is like salads, because they are so time consuming, and you'll get. I say the problem at Collectivo is that people, when you get a huge line of people, and it's all these like, high income mothers that just are like, complaining about their husbands or whatever. They come in.
It's very specific.
That's what happens though. That's what you hear. Like, I've literally had times where like I'm like rationing out coffee stuff and like making that in the pots, and then I just hear like, and he totally, you would not believe how he, yeah, like, yeah, unacceptable. So to top that off, the seasoning on the salad, if you will. It's you get like a lady that will order like, I'll have the sesame chicken salad. I see the ticket come up and I'm like, oh great. And then I see another ticket come up with a different person with the same salad, and it's like, you know what had happened is she ordered the salad. Lady behind her was like, oh, that sounds good. Can I get the sesame chicken salad? And then it's just a chain reaction down the line.
Then some like biker guy, he's like, hey, I'll take a salad.
Yeah, he's like, I better start eating healthy. Give me that salad. Give me that salad.
Oh, we have our pooch joining us for the podcast.
Yeah, get out of here, Jules.
Oh my gosh, that was a great impression of
She's so obnoxious.
salad eaters.
Yeah, it's just I was like, it's hilarious, and like the only reason I was able to eat it in a bowl is because then it gives me room to work. Like you need some
a bowl
room to
at
work.
least twice as big as the salad.
Correct,
Yep.
because it's like you got leaves everywhere. You kind of got to like dig around a little bit. The stuff's flying everywhere.
Salad is also not filling.
No, it's not.
No.
It is a huge problem.
It's, the Jim Gaffigan thing about bacon. He said,
Yep.
when you make the salad better with bacon, it just becomes a game of hide the bacon.
Hide the bacon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Take them all out
that's
of
what
there.
it feels like. It's
you
like
put bacon on a salad.
you know what a salad should be: 90% meat, 10% lettuce.
That's why I always
That's
say a salad is a sandwich without bread.
It's true.
That's
Yeah.
perfect
Do a
way to
wrap.
put it.
Do a wrap. That's the healthy alternative. If you want like,
It's got carbs, bro.
It's got carbs.
What are you, crazy?
The flour tortilla is worse than bread.
Gluten me,
Really?
baby. That's all I got to say. Go ahead.
what about like a wheat
Pure,
tortilla?
unsaturated
Whole wheat,
gluten.
100%, baby.
Yeah.
Do it.
Give me that
Whole
100% whole wheat diabetic horse.
Diabetic horse, baby.
All right, I actually have a tilting opinion. I remember.
Oh,
now.
here we
off
go.
it.
All right.
The one thing, and Mr. Bears, this will trigger you.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Are you ready
Oh,
for this?
boy.
Yes. Yes.
I did not like Blade Runner when I watched it. As we were
Wait,
talking
the
about
first
it,
one
I remember.
or the
Yeah.
new one?
I should have pulled up a camera at that moment.
Zach's dead. I don't have a knife, so I'll throw my phone. No, that's fine. Tell me why. Tell me why.
It's been a little while since I watched it. I watched it, I want to say like in February or March. I had like a day off from school, and I was like, oh, I loaned it from Josh. Loaned
The
it to me.
original or
No, the director's
new
cut.
one?
It
Okay.
was director's cut.
But it's the original.
The original.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I haven't seen the new one, and I do want to see the new one, even though
Okay.
I have differing opinions. There were things. I'll start with the positives that it's hard to recollect everything. The things I loved from the first movie, setting obviously set the standard for cyberpunk, and I appreciate it all like to high heaven for that. Decker, wonderful, awesome character, super well characterized. I love like the gruff detective, character archetype, but they do that really well with the world he's in. The enemy, the fights, I loved every single fight that happened. The in-between scenes are what bothered me and what made me not like it. I think I felt like the character interactions with like him and Rachel and other characters when it wasn't like he was conversing with a villain or something like that, or trying to find he's like hunting down a replicant, felt a little flat to me.
Did you have his narration? Because the director's cut didn't have narration that I remember. His narration makes the movie.
Really?
I can
interesting.
tell you because I have seen both because I wanted to see what it was like, and it was very, even for me, a real Blade Runner fan,
Yeah.
it was very empty. Not having his self-narration. So only thing I'm going to say to you is try watching it with the narration.
I do want to try that,
because
yeah.
it gives a lot of context for how he was feeling or how he feels about another character.
Yes.
Or,
and that was a huge
See,
problem for me when I watched
and one
it.
of the
yeah.
things is, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but he was talking about like Rachel.
Yeah.
And he was in his self-narration that you normally don't hear in one of the versions. He's like, I have feelings. How could I have feelings for Rachel or for this, when he killed Zora?
Mm-hmm.
How could I have feelings for her? Like, I don't understand. But he's saying this to himself. So now all of a sudden you understand that it's not just
Yeah.
Rick Deckard. It's more than that. And
Yeah.
you get a better, so that would be my only recommendation. If you
Yeah.
still don't like it, coolio. That's great. But I
No,
think
but
it would help.
that
I think it would
fills in
help
the
you
void of
a
what
lot.
I was felt was a problem, was that it was hard to, and that makes me want to watch it again. Like you said, it gives more kind of validity and gives more realization to like what's going on in the characters' heads, and fills the void.
It really does, I
because
think.
that was the void that bothered me, was that when there were interactions, it was very hard to tell what people were feeling, and that was always rough for me. And that's always hard for any kind of like movie or television show, when it's like what is this character feeling? What are they feeling in the situation right now? Like, you could feel the intensity, and you can feel like either the awkwardness or uncomfortableness or like the, you know, whatever vibe that they're giving. But in terms of like inner dialogue, that's something that like I think would definitely
another scene
that.
I think about. Remember the scene where he and the other guy who he was working with, but they went into Leon's apartment and they pulled a drawer and he saw the pictures. Well, if it wasn't narrated, you wouldn't understand. You just saw him pull the pictures, but he actually said, "This doesn't make any sense. Why would he have pictures? Because replicants don't have families." So there's that whole conversation about why would they want pictures. Yeah, that's helpful for me.
That is very
As
helpful.
Why did they get rid of it in the director's cut?
Who knows?
Because isn't it supposed to be like a detective noir style?
Yeah, exactly.
You,
Phil.
need
That's
the
exactly
narration
right.
for that.
Maybe like originally the director didn't want to have those in there.
Yeah.
That might have been the case.
But
Interesting.
definitely. So
Okay,
That's
That-
a good
circle around.
point because I was going to rewatch it. And that's
See,
good
even
to
now,
know.
my tilting opinion is already like,
like,
you know what?
that's
Yeah, I'll
fine.
give it another shot. It's gone.
That's the fun of it.
It's funny.
Like, oh, it
nice.
actually
Yeah.
isn't valid. Whoops.
But I did give some fair points then.
You did,
But I did,
absolutely.
okay.
No, I agree with you.
There were things, because I was telling Josh that when I first watched it, there were things that I absolutely loved, but like those in between scenes were what disappointed me and that detracted from it, because it would be like if they weren't doing establishing shots, if they weren't doing setting up scenes or chase scenes or detective scenes, I didn't enjoy it. And that's
Sure. I can understand.
that was kind of why I was like, oh, I wish I
understand
was
that.
hoping for more, but that definitely would add to the experience. So I'll have to check that out.
That's actually good to know. Now when I rewatch it, I'll know.
Okay.
We can't have a Tilt Brigade episode without talking about Star Wars. And
Really?
I saw that was one of I want Mr. Bears to go on this one because
Okay.
I wish we had
I'm
Chris
really
here,
interested
too.
to see. Yeah. So one of our other friends who actually like started this whole thing because
He's the tilt master.
We
is.
call him
Okay.
like Grandmaster Tilt because there was like it was like on accident at the end of one episode he was giving an example and then he like made an offhanded comment of like, and it's kind of like Lord of the Rings when they do this, but like it's overrated anyway. And Phil and I were like,
I was like, wait, you can't just say that at the end.
What?
No, I think he just ended it randomly.
He's
Like,
like,
we'll see you
oh.
guys next time. He's like, Lord of the Rings is overrated. And
we were like, yeah. So then since then we were like, we literally need to have an episode where we just like air our grievances with like media and
The
pop
airing of the
culture and
grievances.
salads and
so
stuff
he started
like that.
it all. He was the originator.
So we went hard on the Star Wars talk because he's a huge Star Wars fan. So I'm curious what you think. First, did you? Well, I'll read your thing here. So it says critics of movies like Solo or The Force Awakens. Just because you're stuck in a time warp doesn't mean the rest of us have to be. Have a bloody open mind. Like you really know what Han Solo was like before Episode 4. You got to make it interesting.
That was good
Slam
poetry.
poetry.
I just any movies like that, you know, it's like I loved Force Awakens. I loved Rogue One. I loved Solo. I like the fact that you're. Well, okay, so let's go back up. So a lot of the people who are critics of movies like Force Awakens or Solo or whatever, they're all like, well, it doesn't match with the lore. It doesn't do this or that, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on, Tex, because, you know, 95% of the people who I know who walked into Episode 4 when it first came out, and I know I was standing in a half-mile long line in Washington, D.C. when that came out, 1977. And okay, so
True pop culture master.
so we had no idea what Star Wars was or what the universe was or what anything. We had no knowledge at all, and we loved the story. It was awesome. It was amazing. And so were the next two movies. They were great. And so when someone criticizes things like Force Awakens because it didn't match the lore, it's not what the story is, or Luke isn't, how do you know? Like, how do you know? Did you write the original story? Can you not just think about it as another part of the Star Wars saga? They just added another chapter to the author who just wrote 6 books, who I love, he just wrote a 7th book. Doesn't matter what it's about, but it's the 7th book in a series, and I love the author, and I love the character he's been writing about. I'm going to like this book because it's him, and it's a great story. So that's kind of how I feel about things like that. And Solo, I love Solo. And I don't know what, like I said, you know, you read it. And really, all these people who criticize Solo, how many of them really knew what Han Solo was like? No, none of them knew what Han Solo was like. They knew what they maybe wanted him to be like. But so what? It was an awesome. I loved it.
Was that like a complaint? Was that because like I remember watching the trailer and thinking like he acts very much like the original Han Solo did.
Well, their thing was,
seemed like.
well, that's not. Their complaint was it's not what he would have been like. Well, how do you know that?
He's younger. He doesn't have as much experience at the time.
He's forming his personality. He's forming who he is. The experiences he had in Solo were what shaped him as a person. He saw people die that he loved, or people disappear, or the life he lived. So things like that. It doesn't matter what movie it is. When people, and we'll go back. So that's my thing about movies like that. But even like Lord of the Rings, people were all like, blah, 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 you know, wah. It's like, wait a minute. First of all, it's a totally different media. Yeah. We're not talking about a book, which again, you know, a little pop culture flashback. When I went to college, it was almost required reading. And if you had not read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, you basically couldn't get a date.
Nice.
I'm just telling you, man.
Bring it back, baby.
Because one of the first things that somebody would say, hey, did you just read The Hobbit? I did. Oh, okay, let's sit down and have a drink. You know?
Eligible bachelor over here.
The Hobbit.
So, a book is different than a movie. I know it's the same story. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So
that's kind of my
a movie title that I noticed you did not mention,
include,
which Phil and I looked at. We're like, huh, there's one missing. What did you feel about the last Jedi?
Ooh, boy.
Like no. So I was fine with that too. I was. Sorry, guys. I was. No, I'm not going to apologize.
No, I'm on your side. I felt I was okay.
Brigade. You push forward. Yeah, you own it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but again, you had Force Awakens. What's the next logical step in the story? Well, you have to develop Daisy Ridley's character. You have to develop her. She has to become more than she is now. Something has to happen with Luke. You set that up. I mean, if you didn't do anything with Luke, you'd be stupid. I mean, think about the end on the Skellig. You know, actually, Skellig Island was where they filmed that, by the way. Just a little trivia thing.
What's
off
that?
The coast of Ireland.
Oh, okay.
It's you can't even go on it now without special permission, but it actually was where a major monastery during the Dark Ages was. The Irish monks
Do they have the giant aliens with the milkers?
They had none of that stuff. They do have puffins, by the way, which is interesting that they use the birds or the animals.
because they had to not Photoshop, but edit them out basically.
Yeah, and then they had those little birdie creatures, which fun. Anyway, so I digress. But they had to do something with the characters. So what do you do with the characters? Well, you've already committed in Force Awakens. So were those good character development? I thought so. I don't know. They seem to make sense to me.
I'm kind of on the same wavelength because I listened to their episode about it, and
I'll send it to you so you can hear.
I want to know.
It devolved from just talking about it to
I'm in the boat. When I watched it, I thought it was decent, but whenever you guys gripe about it, I'm like, I can see that.
I think it's harder. Like my issue with the movie itself is just bad storytelling, and there's very specific things that they do that it's not just in general it was just bad. It's they do certain things that isolated are very cool. In the theater, my heart stopped when they did the slow-mo silent warp speed. That looked awesome. But then the lingering thought in my brain was why didn't they do that from the beginning? And then it's well, if that has been the whole thing, why haven't they just been, kamikazeing Star Destroyers the last few movies? And it's that seems out of character. Or even if they would have tried it and it would have failed, or they would have even maybe dented one or taken out the reactor, something, but it was just this epic, oh my gosh. And in the moment you're oh, that was cool. But then you think about it and it's does that make a lot of sense in terms of...
No, but I think you can isolate those moments and still appreciate them for what they are.
Right, but then you look at... That was our argument, is then you look at the string of the other isolated moments, and all of a sudden it's kind of what were you trying to do?
It's a little bit disjointed.
It's disjointed because one kind of dwarfs another, and then the whole Rose arc, and I was gonna
say the only thing I would say with that movie was parts with Rose really bothered me. Her arc in the story, I would say, the whole island scene releasing the animal. I remember I was listening to Ben Shapiro about that.
Good man. All right.
He had a funny opinion because he said he did like the movie and aspects of it, but he talked about how much he didn't like Rose, and he was like, I almost walked out of the movie theater.
You know who I hated more than her was that Admiral. She was the most annoying, self-righteous person in the world, and I was hoping he'd just pull out a blaster and shoot her. I would like, okay, now it's a good movie. It is a good movie. I love that.
No, I do agree with that.
I just hate it, and then when Leah came back and she was like, oh, well, she knows what whatever. She
didn't become redeemable till the very, she sacrificed herself, and even then you're like, oh, that's nice.
And even that felt so false for me somehow because the way she played it and the way they wrote the character. I have two words for you though when it comes to being a science person, not just science teacher, but science. One of the things about science fiction is people end up forgetting the second part of that, and they forget two words: suspend disbelief. And I think sometimes that we're too literal when we watch movies, especially science fiction movies or fantasy movies, and we can't suspend disbelief because we have meta information in our heads that those people in the movie don't know. We know things they don't know or should know. It's kind of like in D&D. If somebody has meta information, then that's bad. And as a dungeon master, you need to make sure they don't know things they wouldn't know as the characters. But when you have that, it changes your perspective on a movie or on a story, I think. I think maybe that's part of what the issue is. And
I totally agree. And I think, because I've made that argument with other stuff too, is I think that's a huge issue in current pop culture is people can't kind of step out and see, okay, what is this movie trying to do? And and I think that's my gripe, is it's not specific things and then I wouldn't have done that, so that's a problem. It's more, what is the movie trying to do? Does it do what it's trying to do well? And I think to me, that's why The Last Jedi was just flat out not good, is because it didn't do what it felt like it was trying to do well. And
what was
and
it what did you...
And that's the thing, is I don't know what it was trying to do because
there's a lot of different storylines that kind of made it confusing.
And that's why I genuinely really, really liked, and I was really excited after seeing Force Awakens. I really genuinely...
Well, you were excited after Last Jedi too.
But I could go back to Force Awakens and yes, there's things that I'm sure you could point to, but you have Kylo Ren and his struggle, and it's very clear, and there's a very deep, impactful death there. It's interesting. You have what's her name, Rey, and her journey and having to kind of figure out, and you're kind of not sure, maybe some of these other characters are Force people, or maybe Finn is Finn the Jedi, and so there's a mystery and there's an air of mystery. But then all of a sudden they stepped into The Last Jedi, and it was almost as if everything became concrete with no experience out of anybody. And then it was
we shouldn't get it because we could. I think we could go. It ended up
by
being
all
another
means,
Star
please
Wars
push
podcast.
back, but.
The thing is, it's funny because you had, when you first started saying that, you were saying Rey has this arc and interesting thing, and then you said Kylo Ren has this interesting characterization. I think that's still present in Last Jedi, in my opinion.
That didn't leave, but then the things around that, you said, muddled it. So then you have all of a sudden this side thing with Finn and Rose, and then you have this thing with Poe, and then there's this fake admiral, and then there's Luke's whole thing, and then and then I know there's been a lot of arguments with Rey being a
it's very, do you know
it's when everything just goes Mary Sue, I think, is a character that in the first movie that doesn't really come across because it's you kind of have to set things up and orchestrate, but then all of a sudden I remember so vividly that in Last Jedi they're kind of doing that parallel between episode 5 when Luke is in on Dagobah and he's underground and that whole scene, that's dope and that's a really dark, but then all of a sudden with this one they're trying to parallel it, and it just felt what the heck was that? It didn't teach her anything. She was just oh, there's infinite universe, blah, 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 blah. And it was just it was a visual.
With that scene I have to agree, because I was hoping and expecting it to be the Luke scene
yeah
on Dagobah, exactly, and then it just went nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But it went everywhere. At the same time.
Oh, that's so mystifying.
So I would have to agree with you on that scene. I would agree that seemed pointless almost. You could have skipped that and it would have been okay. Or something else could have happened down there and it would have been okay.
Well, maybe if they had simplified the idea of the Force like they did in episode 5, it would have been much easier to be... if they had that continuity, it may have even made the Force a more interesting aspect because it stayed true to how it was originally. And then thusly you're like, even fans and new fans are able to follow it more like better, like because Luke has an understanding of it and what he learned and experienced. He can easily just it would make sense for him to copy and paste what he learned and share that with Rey, but they just decided not to do that. So
you had something to say, and then we won't, like, because we've done like so many where
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like a lot of the problems come from they were just trying to do too much in one film. Like, because if they would have focused more on the continued narrative of Rey and Kylo, which is what they kind of did in the movie, but like you said, they muddled it with a lot of other things. I think they should have trailed that out a little bit more.
The best parts are overshadowed by the worst parts.
I would agree. Yeah.
So,
and I think that can all at some level that can all come back to directing.
Yeah,
I think to your point
definitely.
of how it, because the director drives the story and where it goes. And
and I think that brings up a bigger conversation in pop culture in general, where like you're saying, people with a lot of things that they hold near and dear to their heart, like all of a sudden they make this thing and all of a sudden it's bad because it doesn't fit with like the lore. It doesn't fit with like how I perceive things are. And it's like, that's not really always a good way of arguing why something's bad necessarily, or inherently bad versus just subjectively bad. So versus actually having like technical or directorial complaints about it, which I don't know anything about. So usually when I see something, I'm like, I don't know. That was good. Decent.
That was good.
Right.
But then when I hear somebody explain it, I'm like, oh, I can kind of see like where like it did feel disjointed in some parts.
Yeah.
And confusing about like, what are they actually trying to say in this movie? Because it doesn't feel as cohesive as the first one did. Because I remember walking out of the first one just being like, all right, Star Wars is back.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
go.
Yeah.
And then that one, I was like, that was a dope lightsaber scene, but like, I don't know.
A
lot of it felt inconsequential. Like Snoke is just
yeah. It's like that was kind of
they built that up in the first movie. Like Snoke is this big guy, and he can't even sense that a lightsaber is like turning around to. Like,
he's like all surprised and
So I mean, we can digress on that because we've ranted about Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'll send you the other one where
Please,
we like deep dive hard and it's
You get a little
I get pretty fiery
off the chain.
I get pretty fiery. Phil, do you want to do your tilt that you had listed?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of tilting opinions about things.
It's not true.
I mean, I it's kind of like Zach. Like, I have tilting opinions, but I'm more often like a people pleaser. So I'm just like, yeah, I could see whatever. Like,
we like to admit that we can see both sides to it. It's like, I hated it, but I can see where people would like it.
Yeah, so it's like, it's hard to have like fiery, strong opinions about things. And usually when I do, it's like a joke, like the GameCube thing. It's like, I really don't like the controller, but I also don't really care that much. But it's just fun to
it's fun
to poke fun at you guys about it.
Yeah. It's all right.
GameCube.
we had our last Tilt Brigade episode. I went off the chain with GameCube controller hate. It was pretty funny. But yeah, my only gripe is with, it's hard to explain because on one hand I like it, but on the other hand I don't like it. So like the concept of open world games, I think like on one hand, like a Skyrim, like the world is open, but like to me everything feels like it has purpose in some extent. So like every city you go to, you learn lore, and like it feels like a deep, rich heritage that this little city or whatever has, and like you feel like you're immersed in the actual world. And I feel like it's becoming a modern trend in gaming where like everything has to be open world, everything has to be like free range sandbox. Like, and to me it's like, if you're not gonna make the world have a purpose, or if everything's not gonna have some sort of purpose, to me it's just like, why are you expanding the world so much? Like, who cares if I can just walk around wherever the heck I want? Like, I don't know. So it's kind of like this it seems like a trend where like you're not getting your money's worth if it's not open world sandbox gaming. So it's like every franchise seems like it's going the open world route. So.
I think that's honestly just game developers hopping on the trend.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying.
Like, they're just hopping on what's popular, because like I feel that same way of, there are some games that are exceptions, Skyrim, like Legends of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. But I think for me, I'm in that same boat of like, I like stories and games that like aren't this That's why I'm like not really excited for the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Which might be getting scrapped and redone. So,
really?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I did not.
From a coworker. Who's
I mean, do you know what? Like, I'd honestly, because do you know what I was hoping for was that if it was just like a what I was hoping for was that it was a remastered version of the original like I played the PlayStation version. It looks terrible, polygons and all that stuff, but it's amazing story-wise and amazing setting-wise. Like, you do not get a better feel for the world and vibe and just all around like characterization, and just it's a lively world. Like, you literally go to like a kind of red light district in this one part when you're trying to rescue Tifa, I think, gets kidnapped by like the corporation or whatever. And there's all these different sequences where it's like you feel a part of the world, but it's not an open world game at all. It's super linear because it's a JRPG. But if you are a masterful story writer, if you're good at creating an interesting setting and interesting NPCs and characters, you can have a very straightforward A to B world be interesting.
Yeah. And
that's what I feel like that game accomplished with it. So
yeah, and I think like with a Skyrim, like with Bethesda's games, a lot of the times, because the world is so giant, it becomes hard to tell a good, distinct storyline that follows all the way through. But then if you're going to do that, you need to have like really good role-playing elements where you can kind of write your own story and go wherever you want to go and do what you want to do and make that a meaningful experience in the game. But it's kind of like with Final Fantasy, like if you just open up the world and I can do whatever I want, like if the story gets muddled because of that, then like what are you really doing other than hopping on a bandwagon?
That was like the complaint with Final Fantasy 15, I'm pretty sure. Was that it was like it was an open world game, but then
the story falls flat in like the last
falls
3
flat because
chapters
it goes from open world to linear. And I think that was the problem, is people, I know I myself was sort of enjoying the story, but it wasn't that exciting. Like, I thrive on Final Fantasy because the stories are so good and in depth, but it starts off as an open world and it doesn't become like an old school Final Fantasy game until like 15 hours in. But then people said it was such a stark transition that it just didn't work.
I think Far Cry 5, just finished it.
What'd you think?
And I thought the game was great until the ending. And it was the most disappointing, horrible ending experience in the world, because it was just it was not an ending. And then I went and I played it the other way. I made the other choice. It's still not an ending. And I'm going, wait a minute, I just spent how many hours playing this game? And I love the game. It's the first Far Cry that I ever played, actually. I didn't know what really to expect, and I was really enjoying it. And it was kind of sandboxy. I mean, you had a lot of choices you could make, but you still had an end goal. But then once you got there, and you were like, what I felt like was nothing I did mattered. It didn't matter that I intervened in this story. It didn't matter that I was a part of this story and made the choices I made. And I say that as an example because I think part of, Phil, your issue with open world and stuff, I think as a society, as a culture, that we don't want to make people choose between right and wrong. So I think our games reflect that in a lot of ways, because Far Cry would be an example. So if you made this choice, it was right. If you made this choice, it was right. Or it wasn't wrong, or it wasn't wrong. But there wasn't a right choice and a bad choice. But we live in a world where at least our basic values tell us there's a right and a wrong. And if you're in an open world game, you don't have to choose.
You just do whatever the heck you want.
Right, you can be a good guy for a long time and kill monsters and beat up bandits, and all of a sudden you can decide to be a thief and an assassin and just kill people. That's cool. As long as I can still kill dragons, that's cool. But I mean, and I understand, that it's just a game. I get that. So many adults don't understand that these things are just games, which makes me mad too. That's a whole other issue.
That is a general consensus among gamers, is that it's like, we understand it's a game.
It's a freaking game, man. But again, to your point, is that I think that we don't want people to make choices because they don't want to, because they don't like making choices. And if we don't force them to, then they feel better about their experience. That's kind of my feedback to you.
Yeah, I think it does. Like in a more linear game, it does feel restrictive in some ways. Like,
yes,
I want to be able to do what I want whenever I want, but at the same time, like if you're trying to tell a certain type of story, sometimes I feel like a linear narrative is almost better, because you you can still add choices, but the choices are between like specific actions, not just like, oh, I can choose to walk wherever the heck I want to walk, whenever I want to walk.
I was actually going to use the example of like Persona 4, if I can. This is like a spoiler for, I'd say, like halfway through the game. And you guys have all played it, right? Well, I mean, you haven't played it, but you probably don't. It's a JRPG, a really famous JRPG game that people herald as like one of the best, and it is. Like we've talked about it on the show and have praised it to high end. And it's like this murder mystery case, and it's like it plays out really well. It's a super interesting story. Just like these obviously high school kids in Japan, like basically trying to catch a murderer in their hometown, and but it's tied to like the supernatural world and stuff like that they encounter. There's a point in the game where you're interrogating the dude who you think is the murderer that they've caught, and it's interesting because what happens is there's 3 choices, and I remember reading online before, like I looked like spoiler-free choice decision, because what happens is there's a neutral choice, a bad choice, and then a choice that continues the plot along, which I feel is weird because for me, I'm like, well, I obviously want to choose the one that forces the plot along. So then what happens is there's like the 3 options you have is basically like all your friend, like the bad option is like you basically throw the guy into the supernatural, like everyone's like, he's a killer, we need to kill him, so you throw him into the supernatural world and he dies, and everyone's like, we did, like we have to live with this from now on, and that's the end. And that's kind of like, oh, that's rough. Well, and then you're just left with that. And then the neutral decision is that you don't turn him in, you don't do anything, like you kind of make this unanimous decision of like, let's not kill him, basically. But then which was the decision I made originally, but even in that, the game basically just ends and is like, well, we'd never found the killer, but hopefully we'll find him eventually, and then the game ends, which I was like, that...
Yeah, see, like...
And then it was literally, the game was almost like, you should do this decision-making, and you should make this choice in order to progress the story, which I thought was an issue.
I don't like it when developers pigeonhole you into choosing certain things. Like, that was one of my gripes with Dishonored, is like, if you play the game just killing everybody, not stealthily, you basically get punished by getting like the terrible ending, because like they're like, you shouldn't kill people, you should play it stealthy. It's like, I don't want to play stealthy.
And that's the thing.
I want to slaughter all the guards. Like, that's the kind of assassin I am.
Yeah, the way I thought with like Persona 4, what would have made it better is that if like for every single choice, it advanced the plot no matter what you did, no matter what choice. Like maybe I think like if there was like a dialogue change, so like if they did kill the guy and found out there was someone else, that would have been really cool, because then you have this whole narrative of like, these kids murdered someone, like we killed someone that was innocent, and then that would have a whole different storyline. Or you follow the normal route like I had chosen and just been like, all right, we're not going to kill him, but there's still someone out there, because it's this weird thing of you have to like choose the right dialogue sequence.
It's very disjointed and you would never know. You would never looked up. So, I think to chime in, one thing is I do think there are technical and narrative constraints in the same way that you would with like a movie or a book, that you like in opening up to infinite options, you have to account for infinite possibilities. Like what happens when you do that, but then you also have to account for like what happens for the people who don't do that, and then what are other branches of like other decisions that you might have to make down the road, and it just kind of explodes. To the Far Cry 5 thing, I'm just...
You triggered Josh.
No, I actually not at all, because I know a lot of people who had the exact same reaction, and I read a lot of that. Unanimously, people were like, it was stupid fun. What the heck was with that ending?
And do you mind, like, or you haven't beaten it yet?
You can just spoil it. I'm not going to play it for a long time.
I don't really care either.
So just
spoiler
at
alert.
At 1:02 or an hour and 2, if you haven't played Far Cry 5 and are planning on playing it or beating it, stop listening.
Or don't care about the ending.
Yeah, if you don't care about the ending. So the way the ending goes is there's 3 endings. There's
a good, a bad, and a nuclear kind of. Yeah,
so there's a neutral. The neutral, that's a good way to put it. So there's just like, and the interesting thing is actually just like in Far Cry 4, and it sounds so like you said, this is the first one you've played. So in Far Cry 4, that was the one that they introduced the option where you're sitting at the table next to the villain, because he like kind of commandeers you and like brings you to his palace, and if you just sit there, he like comes back, he's like, all right, let's go like scatter your mom's ashes, and like that's the end of the game. And then you can like beat the game, quote unquote, in the first like 10 minutes that you play it. So that's interesting. So in this one, they have the same thing where Joseph Seed is standing in front of the altar with his hands out, and you can just like walk away. and then the game ends. So like
Credits
that's
roll.
one end, and the credits roll, which is, and then so I'm going through all of them because I have a point to make of like
Yes,
kind
go
of
ahead.
to
Go
our
ahead.
prior discussion. And then the other ending is you walk away at the end of the game and you don't arrest him, and you get in the car and you start driving with all your team. Well, part of the narrative of the game is one of the crazy siblings. His whole thing is he like brainwashes people into being killers. So
Well,
it's
like
almost
the
like
cult- the cult mentality.
Yeah,
of,
it's like literally it's almost like an MK Ultra kind of thing where it's like you hear a song and then it turns you into like you just start like slaughtering people.
Like the SIM cards on Kingsman or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that happens, like you experience it and it's very noticeable, and the way the screen distorts. And at the end of the game, as you're driving out with the rest of your team, you're like, wow, they like got out, and like that's heavy. And all of a sudden the sheriff turns on the radio and the song starts playing, and then it starts like hazing or whatever, and then he's like, what's up, Rook? And then like the screen cuts and that's the ending.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and so that was kind of cool. The bad ending, or the nuclear ending, I guess, that's the fascinating one. So what happens is you beat Joseph Seed and you go arrest him, and he's like standing at the end of this like lake right by the church from the beginning of the game, and he starts quoting, I don't know if it's an actual verse or
a Bible.
I can't remember what Revelation verse it is, but he starts saying, and I heard birds flying in the air, and all of a sudden like flocks of crows are like going off in the distance, and all this, and there was a rushing wind, and then like a wind rushes, and then he's like, and then like fire rained from heaven, and there's like a nuke blast that goes off in the distance, and you're like, oh frick.
So he was right, kind of.
And so he was right the entire game, and so like I totally understand and do not fault anybody for being frustrated of like the times I tried to stop stuff didn't matter. I couldn't actually stop him. I actually couldn't shut down the cult. But I think to me it was almost genius of like, you're playing this whole game thinking you can stop this guy who's making all these
Because you
crazy
think he's a
predictions.
nut cult
Because you think
dude.
he's a nut.
But he's actually-
But what happens
yeah.
when he's right? And then what happens when like his prediction actually comes true, and then his final words at the end of the game in that bunker are like, I was right. And then it's just him staring at you
even
creepily, and you're like,
even the quote good ending, Josh, which is a little bit expanding that a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're standing there talking to him, and all of a sudden you hear something behind you. You turn around, and about 8 or 10 of his goons, who all have this little green misty thing because of his sister did the thing. They have your 3 buddies down on their knees with guns pointing at their heads, and he could very well. It's like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You gonna save your friends? What are you gonna do? And because if you don't do what he wants, if you don't just walk away, your friends are gonna die. You're gonna die. So you walk away from that, and he lets you go. That's the weird. And so you think, okay, that's the really crappy part. Like you're going, that's where you feel helpless. Like it didn't matter what the heck I did. He wins, sort of. But then you're driving away, and this is the other thing in the truck where you were talking about the music coming on. The guy next to you, the sheriff, was like, we're going to get the National Guard. We're going to come back here and we're going to kill them all. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, so it's going to end. But then it ended. Like it did.
It was almost like there wins no matter what.
Well, and that to me is like the interesting question, because I only bring in this perspective because I actually watched a bunch of interviews. I watched a bunch of interviews with the guys who wrote it and like actually like directed the game. And one of the guys actually is like pretty firm. If he's like, I think the world is going to end soon, which like that was a very interesting perspective.
Wow.
But he was like writing it, just the way he was talking about it was like they were very, very purposeful, it seemed like, in making that the ending, because I think in a weird way it's like when you play a crazy cult game where there's a bunch of cult people, it's like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, like I'm saving all these people from getting brainwashed, but then it's like this weird mind trip of like, in doing the right thing I actually ended the world, which is what he predicted. So in like the quote unquote good ending, if you just like in the very beginning of the game, if you just walk away, the world doesn't end, literally just by dragging out that train of logic of like, you don't trigger the events throughout the rest of the game that will actually cause the nuclear holocaust. So it's like, oh my gosh, like how do you wrestle with,
because in his lore, you are the war horsemen or whatever.
Exactly.
You're the one who's bringing in the apocalypse. So like,
the horseman,
if you never bring your men there, the world never ends.
Exactly.
So like, basically the only way to like stop Joseph Seed is to not play the game.
Exactly. Which is like
I could see why people would be mad at that because like you're playing a game where you're like shooting up culties and you like, yeah, I get to destroy a cult, like whatever, and you end the game and it's like no matter what you do, the cult wins basically.
Right.
Like I could see where people would be mad at that, but at the same time it's like, frick, this is kind of like, it's almost like going back to like the 1984 like Brave New World thing of like, no matter what you do, the world's screwed anyway.
This is what I was going to add to that. Like, in the way the story portrays itself, it doesn't, and I think maybe that's what was frustrating about it. The world doesn't portray itself as hopeless. And I think that's the reason why I think...
You do get the sense throughout while you're playing the game. I played for a couple hours, and it just feels like any other
Which is, I think may have been the issue of why that caused frustration, because I think of, I won't say what the ending is, but Neon Genesis Evangelion, the ending for that, one of the videos I had seen, or like the thumbnails for it, said it was like the loneliest anime, and it's because it has the reason why it works so well. And even though like the ending for the whole show is just like, I will say right now, is not only a mind trip, but just like the ending movie that they put out, the end of Evangelion is what it's called, is just the most hopeless, sad thing, but it's warranted. It's because throughout the show you get this feeling of hopelessness that they can't, like humanity can't win against these beings that they're fighting against. They can't win against. Whereas Far Cry 5 portrays itself as like, you know, you had said, Phil, that it's like, I'm going to blow up this cult, I'm going to destroy this thing and be the hero. And then the game just like kind of, is like, nope, turns you around. It's like, we're going to win anyways. Rather than maybe little by little, there could be interjecting pieces of, like, maybe this cult is right. Shoot, maybe this cult actually is going to cause something. If there was inner strife and maybe some signs of hopelessness and some signs that the cult was right to a degree without, you know, spoiling the whole thing, maybe it would have been a thing of like, it made sense because the world was almost building itself up to be destroyed,
but rather than this thing of like of the game,
right?
Maybe
and
like,
that's my
fact
point.
Is the whole game you believe that you can affect change in the world, and then the world
and you're
ends
feeling
anyway.
it. You're literally feeling like you're running around, like blowing stuff up. Like one of my favorite missions is when you actually destroy the statue on top of the hill. Like
that's
that
great.
one's fun.
That one's freaking
and it's like one of these things where like you are making the biggest fu stand to this psychopath who's running this whole show.
Right.
And then at the end, you have this armed guard of like the whole town and some of the characters you meet. Your main character, you've got him at gunpoint, and it's like, you're like, this is over, it's done, we won. And then it's like, you're right, there is like a hopelessness, but it's not hopelessness, it's, oh frick, he was right. Like, and you can't plan for that, because it's even in Neon Genesis, there is like, you can't plan for some of the events that happen. And like, you could argue that same thing of like, those serve as like, oh well, that undercut, you know.
But I feel like that works better in a movie. Like, if you're expecting me to sink 20 minutes, 20 hours into a game just to get this feeling of hopelessness, like,
right.
I don't want to play the game.
And that's what it is. It's like, and that's what I was going to mention, is that you said it's like, it was the fact that the hopelessness was captured in one moment. Yeah. Like you said, I spent 20 hours and then it was just a hopeless ending, rather than this thing of like slow, little by little, you're realizing the hopelessness of it. And I think that's more powerful in that sense. And I think that would have gone better with people, because it was almost this expectation of that, like, it would almost beg the question of, can I really not stop this apocalypse that he's talking about? And then, you know,
I'm going to kind of segue a little bit, but I'm a big StarCraft fan, as you guys know. Big StarCraft fan. Especially Liberty, Wings of Liberty. But the interesting thing, I don't know, Josh or Phil, if you were the ones who mentioned it, but you always feel like you're moving towards a goal. Mm-hmm. And you know what the goal is. The goal is to either kill or save Sarah Kerrigan. You just know that that's the goal. But when they split you off and they give you have to choose to either destroy the settlers or fight the Protoss. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I mean, it does. It has an overall effect on the game based on something you'll gain depending on which choice you make. But no matter which choice you make, you're still moving towards your goal. So even after I made a, quote, bad choice one time, it was okay because I still moved forward. And it was fun because, as I said earlier, it told a story. It moved the story forward. And that narrative in the story is as important as the game to me. Mm-hmm. And StarCraft, that's the reason I love that game, is because of the story. And And so even, I made another choice later on of doing one thing, siding with this assassin who was Arturus Meg's assassin, or this cool Rasta guy, and it's like, oh, the cool Rasta guy, he's awesome. I love him. I love Josh. And it's like, okay, his name was Josh. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Rastaman, yeah.
I dig it.
I'll go fight the aliens, Mom.
It didn't, I gained something from siding with him.
Yeah.
And, but then when I finished, I went on the next mission, and it was cool.
Yeah.
And I gained something. I made some little progress towards my end goal, and I guess the whole thing of having, we don't always have to have a good ending because that's not real.
Right.
We know that's not real. But when you play a game, you want something that, you're right. When you play that 20 freaking hours, yeah, it does. And no matter what the ending's like the ending for Wings of Liberty was kind of sad, actually, in a way. It was kind of sad, but it's still, I got an ending.
Yeah.
And it was only the first of 3 parts, but I still felt like I had an ending. Something was done.
All
even
of
though
your hard work paid off.
It did.
Yeah.
And it was hard work, but that's okay. I don't mind a game like that. I just can't stand one where it's like, okay.
It's this immediate, like, you made all this progress and it was for nothing, which is where I was actually, the other game I thought of that I was like, did a great job of like having, not a similar ending and all, but Undertale's been out for a while, so I'm going to spoil the game. But what that game did really well is it has a neutral, good, and bad. And like pretty much no matter what you do, you're just going to take the neutral route because like that's just how the game functions. And that doesn't force you to do it, but it's like you just kind of go along with everything that happens. And then there's just these things that reveal themselves in the end. But what you feel like when you beat the neutral route is like you're satisfied because you beat the villain, but the villain himself, like, that's why people love the villain Flowey so much, is because like it's this crazy thing of he like transcends the game basically, because then he like actually shuts you out of the program and stuff, and then you try to go back in, and then he like keeps killing your avatar over and over and over and over again, and you feel the sense of hopelessness. But then the game it kicks back off and you beat him, but then the game, he pops up again. He's like, no matter what you do, you're never gonna kill me. And then it ends like that. And that, if Undertale just ended like that, people wouldn't love the game as much as they did. If it was just that thing of like the main villain's like, you're never going to kill me, and that's it. Because then that would be what Far Cry 5 did, was that no matter what you do, the apocalypse is going to happen. But what Undertale does really well is that you play through that route and it encourages you to play again. Because then what the game asks you is like, okay, you took this route. What do you think you could have done different to make a better, like a happier ending like that? And then you do the good ending, and there's so much more to it, and there's so much deeper lore, so much stuff comes out of it, and it comes with an ending that's satisfying, and it comes with an ending that makes you realize, like, it almost trumps over the neutral ending that you had originally. It's not like this thing of,
I think here's where I'll just say, I think part of it too, though, is the subjectivity of what back to that question of like, what is the game trying to do and how well is it doing it?
Yeah.
And I think with Undertale, it's trying to get you to think deeper about the structure of the game and like to play through, and it's trying to give you like an experience. And I think because I don't fault anyone who took umbrage with like how the endings played out. I actually love stuff like that because all of a sudden it's like a meta statement on like, because people were like, oh, it's just bad writing and they were lazy and didn't do it. But to me, it's like, we want a bow. Like, we want it to be like, ha, I beat the cult and I did all the missions and I shut it down. But like, what happens when you did do all that stuff? And it's like, it doesn't matter. They still win. It's like, I don't know if there's a game that's asked that question recently. Like, what happens when they're right? The crazy guy is right. And everything you did do was worthless. Like, what happens when that's the statement?
Yeah, but that statement is only asked at the very, very end of the game,
and they don't give you an opportunity to play with that idea. Then it's
that's my point. Is like, but you again, if you're gonna suspend your disbelief that okay, I'm playing as just all these other characters, it's like, what? This was a waste of time. Well, it's like, well, then you're gonna jump into the meta of like, well, I'm playing a video game and I'm playing as fake people in a fake world, and like, did I, they I think took a very interesting risk in saying what you do does not matter. And I totally think it's fine if people don't like that. I actually really enjoyed it because I thought it was a very interesting statement as to like, who's that?
I mean, I'll give them the fact that it's an interesting bold statement to make on a game. I'm curious, like, if there's any game that I'm forgetting that, like, is there a game that has asked that?
I spent that time. Yeah.
I agree with you because I like that kind of stuff too. And when you told me that, I was like, that's actually pretty cool. But at the same time, it doesn't make me want to play it for 20 hours. Because I'm like, I could just watch the ending and get like the same sort of effect.
Yeah, that's
in my mind.
it's
It's like, oh yeah, okay, nothing matters.
Yeah,
therefore,
that's
I don't
the
need to play
interesting
your
thing
game because nothing matters.
That's the interesting thing is you said the effect. I could just watch the ending and then realize it doesn't matter.
And that's why I said, like, as a movie, I think it works better because, like, I invested 2 hours and now, boom, nothing matters, whatever. But, like, and I agree with you, like, we expect our movies and our games and our books to have nice little bows at the end. That's why when I read, like, 1984 and the ending was just like, I was like, frick, man, like, we've been pampered. Like, books always have, like, nice little endings and that wrap up and give you little hope for the world. And so, like, we don't have a lot of stuff like that today, but I don't know.
There are things out there, though, and, like, I obviously can name some stuff, and, like, I can think of other stuff that does endings, maybe not, like, the hopeless route of that, but, like, are, like, good and satisfying endings, yet have real, like I said, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, the ending for the manga is one where it's, like, there are still things that, like, sacrifices were made, people were lost, that you feel hurt for still, and there's still the effects of that, but it's like a satisfying ending because everything is, turned out for better for worse, good for the main character, for the other characters. And I mean, but it's not
it kind of all comes down to just what types of things do you like out of your media in the end of the day? Like, do you want that nice bow wrapped up? Even if it's not like a nice ending, you want to feel like you always say with Destiny, like, you want to feel like the time you're putting into this game is giving you output, is giving you like a satisfying thing. I spent $60 on this. I spent 20, 30 hours into it. Like, I had a fun time, but like the ending just bummed me out hard, and not in a way that's like, oh man, the world's depressing, but more like the story just doesn't feel resolved. And I think
that also is, again, that's very valid. I think it just depends then what your goal in playing the game is for. Because Far Cry 5 is one of those games I would absolutely go back and play again because it's just fun. Like, it's just bananas. Like, there's so much stuff that, like, once you start getting some of the higher level guns and you start buying planes and you're just like, I'm gonna jump out of this helicopter, fly in, do this, drop this, and it's just mass chaos. And so there is part of it where it's like, I totally understand if your goal in the general experience of gaming is to get to an ending, enjoy the ending, and experience, like, okay, it's done. Totally understand. I think Far Cry it's not necessarily for the story. Like, it's for, like, I didn't play 5 for the story. I was excited of the setting. Like, I thought it was a cool setting. But, like, love 3. 3 has the same thing. The story kind of sucks and the end's very mediocre. But, like, man, is it fun. Same thing with 4. I love being in the Himalayas and that's just fake Tibet and stuff.
To your point, that's loving either the narrative or you're competitive. It's kind of like in Warhammer, you have narrative players and you have competitive players. And I can be competitive. I play in tournaments every once in a while, but I love the narrative side. And that's the thing with StarCraft for me. I mean, you could just watch the ending of StarCraft, the last cinematic, but you'd watch that and go, what? Like, you need the rest. You need the story to understand how important each of those people are in the story. Yep. Which is why I love it. The narrative part is the key to that. You can beat the game easily. You play on rookie. Play on rookie level and you can win.
Which is what I always do.
And I play on casual the first time through when the new episode, because there's 3, it's a trilogy. I played on casual every time just because I wanted to see what the story was. I enjoyed the game part. I enjoyed the competitive part, but the story was what drove it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, in a lot of this, it is about being a competitive get to the ending. Or it's about the story that gets you there and drives you to the end.
And like, I think that was your mentality going in, is that you didn't like, I think this is maybe the first experience for people that they were invested in the world and they were invested in like the quote unquote story. And then when they had that first time investment and that was the ending, that probably bummed a lot of people out. Whereas you came in with the knowledge of this game, like Far Cry 5 doesn't really, like Far Cry is not really a story game. I'm just going to have fun in this. Whereas I can see a lot of people giving into the...
And I think because of the setting of Far Cry 5 and like our political climate right now, like I think people had certain expectations about like
what they were going to say,
the call to the alt-right or whatever sort of mentality. Like, well, what are you going to say about this? And they're like, we don't really want to make a political statement. And so I think like people had that expectation coming into it too. and they're like, we're not trying, like, we're just trying to have fun here. So I agree. I think it's more about like what are you playing the game for? And I think Far Cry fans traditionally play the game because of the dope settings and the guns and awesome gunplay and all that stuff. And then the story
Attacking
takes
people with bears.
The story
and shotguns.
isn't necessarily inherently bad, but it's just the background part. It's not the main focus of the games. Isn't the story. The main focus is getting to use dope guns and shoot up culties and run around the mountains and whatever. Like, and that's totally valid too.
And I think I need to rescind then my criticisms of people who play Destiny, because then it's like I just can't understand the drive, but then at the same time I could see if someone
different play styles.
Just it's people, like that's what draws them is like, well, I just want to collect stuff in this world. Like, so I understand. Yeah, I take it all back.
You're not allowed to have any tilting opinions now.
Dang it. Cool.
No, yeah.
Well, we're at the 125 mark.
Did you want to do anything quick? Because you just did the salad and Greg, so.
I feel like
we could do a quick one if you want.
Sure. Well, let me see.
Because I think each of us did something. Like Star Wars.
I'm trying to see which one of these would be actually like a fun discussion. Are you an adult cartoon fan at all? A little bit.
I am.
Let's do. Have you ever seen Rick and Morty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay.
I love Rick.
This will be fun then. So I finished season 3.
Oh, you watched it?
Last week.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I just finished it like Thursday morning, I think.
still haven't seen it, which I really want to. But or is this where the
This is where the tilt is coming. It's not to like spoiler territory. It's more to say like I find it very funny that Rick and Morty is the show that all the the internet trolls were like, you have to have a high IQ to understand the humor of Rick and Morty and blah.
Okay, wait. So I'm gonna interject pop culture. You wanted to know where I came from on this. So Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
I mean, Ren and Stimpy were my heroes. I love Ren
Nice.
and Stimpy. Just so you know where I came from on
That's
that.
awesome.
So Rick and Morty to me is the next
Sure.
it's the next one of those.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
And it was in that order. It was Beavis, Butthead, Ren and Stimpy, and then
Yeah.
Rick and Morty?
I think I was gonna. So I guess it's like a tilt for a certain community. I have very specific feelings about it. I really enjoy watching the show. Like it's one of the few like more obnoxious adult cartoons that I genuinely love.
It's an Adult
just like
Swim cartoon that's actually enjoyable.
exactly. Yeah, it's like it's ridiculous and obnoxious, but it's like I actually enjoy it. I like watching it and it's fun. I think I do find it interesting that how much weight people put in like the highbrow humor, where I do think it is like clever and just like the commentary it makes, and the like as my family, like I could just kill all of you and clone you all and just live in a different time.
even realize there's multiple universes.
Yeah, and it's like, so I do think like jokes like that where he kind of basically like
think of something. Go ahead.
he's already in an existential crisis of just like, I'm basically God in this show. None of you understand that. I'm just trying to have fun because I can. And then he in his
Bullets
saying
and
like
chips.
nothing matters, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, like does nothing matter? Like I think it's funny in a like like a general commentary, but it's one of those shows where like I never laugh out loud. Like I've never, there was nothing in it that I was like like a good laugh, whereas like The Simpsons will watch and I'm like literally like laughing out loud.
Yeah, I was even laughing out loud last night at some of the jokes.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, especially because you've seen the most recent stuff. Like I think I've always been a fan. I'm a huge Matt Groening fan, though, and like Simpsons and stuff. And I mean, he's got a new show coming out, so I'm really excited for that.
Like
fantasy one. It's basically Futurama and
Unenchanted or Disenchanted.
Disenchanted.
Yeah.
So they've
So it's
joked
gonna
that
be a
it's
medieval type.
exactly.
I'm all
That's gonna
over
be
that.
fun. That'll
Just
be
the
great.
color palette looked fantastic.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks great.
But it's like not to say that Rick and Morty isn't funny, not to say that it isn't well written or constructed. I just never laughed out loud during the entire show that I've watched it. Like there are jokes that are like, that's funny to quote, or like whatever. Like I had a moment with my film professor one time with he was visiting in a class and we were critiquing stuff, and one of our TA or other TA, he was the professor, and our TA made a statement where he's like, all right, does someone want to bring up their video and show us what they got? And I was just like, show me what you've got. And he's like, Rick and Morty. Like that was literally his response.
Yeah, buddy.
So there are like hilarious things in general. I don't, and it's definitely like my taste in humor, but I'm just curious, like in the grand scope of adult cartoons, I find it fascinating that the fan base certain subsects of the fan base are like very into themselves of how smart they are for finding it so funny.
Well,
It's kind of like taking anything too seriously, though. It's a cartoon.
Yeah.
Did you forget the basic premise that it's a cartoon?
Yeah.
Again, it's an adult cartoon, but it's
and you can
a
analyze
cartoon.
those too, yeah, but it's it's not real.
Why do you take this seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't. You know, like Ren and Stimpy, I would laugh so hard. Hey, Stimpy, and I can still hear his voice in my head. And it's just like they went into this parallel universe or something, and they're, you know, like, why is it horn in your head? Or like, why do you have 6 eyes? It's like, oh my god, I have 6 eyes. You know, you'd like go crazy. It just, I would laugh so hard in that. Beavis and Butthead, I didn't laugh, but I loved the show because it was so rebel. And I'm sorry, but that's how I am. I'm just that way.
I hear you, brother.
Oh man,
Pop Culture Punks, baby.
Pop Culture Punks, Rebel Ethics.
Rebel Ethics. That was our original name.
OG.
people taking stuff too seriously sometimes.
Sure.
Like games, you know, or like role playing games, all that kind of stuff. And they didn't take things seriously, you know, or people took them too seriously. And Rick and Morty's the same way, I think. In a lot of ways. Now, you know, I'll never laugh real hard at adult cartoons, but I'll always get that smile on my face, or rarely will I really get a nice kick out of something. I mean, I can remember a couple Simpsons, obviously older ones, but like the first couple Halloween specials, the first couple.
Yes. Yep.
And my boys and I would just be rolling on the floor because something would be so funny.
Cut it out, Homer. Homer, cut it out. Stop eating me.
Like the haunted house one where the house was just like, I can't live. Let's see. He goes, live with the Simpsons or be gone forever. And all of a sudden the house folds in on itself and just disappears. And we were laughing so hard, like, oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah. But I just think with the people who watch those kind of things are people who don't, I think, in general, and I'm generalizing, obviously, all of us who watch, you know, Rick and Morty, we don't take life too seriously. We meet our obligations and we do what we need to do. We get up every day, we go to work, we do those things. But we know when to take things seriously and when not. And if you're not that kind of person, if you get all scrubbed out because somebody said this word or they saw this thing or they did this thing, you're never going to understand. You're not even going to understand Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
that's true.
Let alone be able to watch it for a while. You're going to be like, oh, this is so pretty.
I think I know where you're pointing to, because like on Reddit, people are always like, on the television one, people are always acting like they're like somehow superior because they
enjoy
watch
Rick and Morty.
Yeah, and it's like it's kind of like this fan base, and a lot of people on Reddit with Undertale too. It's like people like refuse to play it just because the fan base has made it so like highbrow.
They make they make it this thing of like, the fans are just so warped in on themselves. Like, you just don't understand
it's
the game.
so intelligent. If you don't like it, you're just an idiot, like sort of thing. And like that's kind of, it seems like that's where you're pointing to, of like, it's funny,
elitist.
it's a good show, but like, why are you taking yourself so seriously? Like,
very
why do you put
elitist.
so much stock
Yeah,
into that?
exactly.
And
I
people
just-
get that way.
Yeah.
And again, doesn't that come back to, I just asked the group a question, doesn't that come back to having to feel better about yourself?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you say that, or you act like this is something that you should write a book about when you shouldn't.
Do a podcast.
You do a podcast.
That's what you do instead.
But it's that elitist thing, and we get that about all kinds of stuff. I know StarCraft was the same way. When that, again, I'm going to use the last cinematic, and people were just talking about, well, this means this and this means that and blah blah. No, it doesn't. He shot him. He walked away. That's what happened in that scene. That's it, really. Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience. Oh, sorry if you were gonna.
No.
I just like I keep saying I've mentioned Fooly Cooley a lot in this show. When I first like finished Fooly Cooley a second time and enjoyed it, I watched a video that said Fooly Cooley is hard to understand and that's okay. Which I was like, because it is it's a zany, stupid, weird show. But in my mind, I remember the first time I watched it, I was upset because I was like, but what's the deeper meaning? What's like the meaning behind this giant robot? What's the meaning behind this thing?
What's
and
the
like,
symbolism?
And it was Mother's Basement, actually.
Yeah.
It was like, he was like, Fooly Cooley is a stupid show. And that's okay. It's okay to feel stupid when you watch this show. Because the creator himself was like, he admitted that Fooly Cooley is literally, he just threw everything he loved from anime and pop culture into the show and just like let it run. And it became this like huge icon and huge like just poster, I think, you know, like just a poster boy for anime and stuff like that. And you know, people are still analyzing it, people are still making videos, and it's like you can take stuff in depth, but at the end of the day, realize that even the creators themselves were not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's when even you as the viewer got to be like, and that's why I liked that video so much, is it's like, it made me realize, like, I can just enjoy the show for how dumb it is and how zany and weird it is.
Yeah.
I don't have to, like, it's like, yeah, it was, like, I get it. It's stupid. It's dumb. But what's the deeper symbolism going on in here? And there is stuff that you can pull out of it, and people that have done analysis do a great job. But I think, like you had said, for any example, StarCraft, Undertale, and Rick and Morty, any medium that you get into, like, it's okay to analyze, it's okay to find the deeper meaning, but just enjoy it. And I think that's what we've talked about on the show all the time, is like, just enjoy what you're watching, what you're viewing.
Our goal for the podcast.
Yeah, I think
is
people
like,
take themselves
just have fun.
seriously. Like, oh, people don't, like, somebody told you Rick and Morty is the stupidest thing they've ever seen. Who cares? Like, just enjoy it. You don't have to like somehow justify everything as if it's like some highbrow thing that you're dumb if you don't enjoy it. It's like,
enjoyed it,
people like it, people don't like it. Like, why is that so hard to?
Did you guys?
Which is why we started the podcast.
Yeah.
So,
did you guys watch Animaniacs at all?
Oh, I love Animaniacs.
Oh my god, that was one of those again.
Fantastic.
Once in a while, they'd put some little piece of something in there, but otherwise, it was just one of those shows that you watched, you laughed at, and you loved the characters, and you were hoping that this episode they would have one of the shorts that was about your guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
it was
Pinky and the Brain.
Pinky and the Brain was awesome, and I loved Buttons and Mindy.
Yeah.
I love that
That was-
one.
yeah.
But you were hoping that one of your favorites would be in there, or the pigeons,
Those are the good pigeons.
The god pigeon.
But that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where Animaniacs was just silly, but it was funny as heck. And
from Steven Spielberg, no less.
but I think it's an older one, obviously.
Sure.
But I think that's a good example of where, why do you take this seriously? Either you enjoy it when you watch it, or I don't get it. Okay, well then just don't watch it if you don't enjoy it. That's fine.
Yeah.
that's our culture is lost on that. Like,
Yeah,
if you don't enjoy something, just don't watch it. You don't have to
Yeah, our
talk about
culture
it. Like,
now-
why are you wasting your time?
It's not like you
complaining about it?
didn't enjoy
Right.
it. You need to tell the world why you did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And why they should also not enjoy it.
Yeah.
Everybody's a critic.
Yeah. No, I
That's
wonder
right.
if part of it too is like there's a fear, and granted, I think this is a different fear. It's like an identity crisis in a way, where it's like, well, you don't like Mass Effect? Well, I love Mass Effect, and then everyone gets all in a tizzy because it's like, yeah, it's fine. I love it. It's one of my favorite games ever. But if you don't like it, like, okay.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if there is a fear of like, subconsciously, well, that might mean that like people might not sell as many games, and if they don't sell as many games, they're not going to make any more Mass Effect, and if they don't make any more Mass Effect, then I'm not going to get to play. I don't get to play Mass Effect, and so then you have to like justify everything to everybody, because it's like, if you don't buy into this, they're not going to buy into this, and they're the ones making it. If they don't buy into this, then I'm not going to get to play anymore, and then they just like go fisticuffs.
I think it's also people just hold things too closely to
I was
their
gonna
chest.
say,
like,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
as soon as you say like I like Fallout. If you told me Fallout's trash, it's not like, oh, that must mean I'm an idiot because I play Fallout. Like I'm playing a bad game.
Right.
But it's like people don't know how to separate the media and the games from themselves. Like, just because somebody thinks the game is bad doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not their cup of tea.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're playing a bad game because you still enjoy it. Like, play the things you enjoy.
Yeah.
So I think it's like people just tie up things with like, oh, if they think this is bad, that must mean I'm an idiot and don't see what's wrong with whatever. And it's like,
that's such a go ahead. Sorry.
This makes me think, the last episode of Cubic Shenanigans, my co-host, we were talking about something where people got all upset about something, and I was commenting on it, and he goes, okay, you're right. He goes, it's okay to be ignorant, and it's okay to have an opinion, but it's not okay to have an ignorant opinion.
Ooh.
And I thought, wow, that was so
Interesting.
good. I don't know where, but it kind of applies to this.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you don't know about it, or you don't want to know about it, that's fine. You can have an opinion, but when you do have an opinion, make sure that you know something about what you're talking about. You don't have to know
if you're
a
just
lot.
running your mouth and people are talking you down, like, you kind of deserve it. Like, don't go complaining about how people are attacking you.
And you
then.
don't have to know. You don't have to be an expert to have an opinion, but you have to know something about it.
Yeah.
And
like, why do you enjoy it? Like, even if it's just, I don't know, I thought it was fun. Like, okay, that's fine.
Well, they were putting down this other group was putting down some of the rules for this one game we play, and they never played it before.
Isn't that the worst
that was
type
my
of
thing.
tea?
Like,
Yeah.
I've never
are you
played this, but here's
freaking
my
kidding me?
opinion.
What are you
Yeah.
talking about, man?
That's
It's
a
just-
weird trend today. I had that with a younger kid because I was with the Eastbrook youth group, and there's a high schooler, and I'd say that like Guardians of the Galaxy is like my all-time favorite Marvel movie. And he was like, I didn't really like Guardians of the Galaxy. I was like, what didn't you like about it? He's like, well, I didn't see it. I just like, and I'm like,
You're like, goodbye.
okay.
There's the ignorant opinion.
I was ready, like, well, and that's the thing too is like even when we just talked about Blade Runner, like you got upset, but you were willing to be like, okay, what did you not like about it? And we had a
Better
healthy
yet, you
discussion.
had the knowledge to say, did you watch this version? It's like, oh, I didn't. Oh, that
Yeah.
might make a difference.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like, okay. And then it's like civil.
Yeah.
But it's when it's like, it was just a dumb movie. Well, why didn't you like it? Well, I never saw it, but it's
I didn't
dumb.
watch it, but my friend told me it was dumb.
Yeah, my friend told me it was dumb.
My friend Jim at work, he said it was real dumb. And I believe everything Jim says. It's like, that's just, yeah.
Jim
that's-
Jim loves Fortnite. He likes playing. I'm trying to think of some dumb games.
he really loves Destiny.
He loves Destiny, Fortnite.
Oh, wait,
Sorry,
wait,
Jake.
wait.
Are we going there?
No.
We've already, Man of
we've
Steel
already
is his
trashed
favorite
on that.
movie.
Oh gosh.
Oof. Yeah.
Anyway.
Suicide Squad is his favorite movie.
That's
That'd be-
shameful. I don't think it is, but
You like? Oh,
you like Suicide Squad?
Let's go. DC all the way.
here we go.
All right. well,
What time are we at here?
pushing 140.
Oh gosh.
Buck 40.
DC baby.
Right when we just had a great opinion, we could
Doop doop.
have a discussion
Boop,
about.
boop, boop, boop. Tail Brigade round 2.
Oh gosh. we have a lot of those on here, but we can wrap up and close out for this episode. So
We had a lot of laughs, a lot of tears, a lot of
a lot of tilting.
a lot of nerdy, a
We're
lot
all
of
sideways
nerdiness.
now.
That was good. That was a good discussion.
And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for
Mr.
Bears for,
Thank you
uh,
for
Yeah,
inviting me,
appreciate
guys.
it.
This was
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
do this
do it
again.
again.
We'll definitely do it
Yes.
again.
For sure.
Again.
Thank you so much.
Cool. You'll have to drive up to Madison next time though. So
Hey, I can do that if you
All
want me
right.
to. I'll do that.
Hey. Cool.
And pick him up on the way.
pick me up from Tokyo.
I can do that too. Yeah.
Just fly over.
Zach's like, wait, don't forget me.
I'm at the airport if you want to swing by. I want to do the podcast.
Cool. Well, you can listen to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. We are the three of us are on Twitter. I don't know, Mr. Bears, if you're a Twitter guy, maybe
I am.
You are
at Stormcaller Dan.
at
Stormcaller Dan.
Nice.
Yeah.
No
I like
underscore.
it.
No
I
underscore.
like it.
No underscore.
I like
Mine
it.
is childish San Pellegrino.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I like it. Yeah, so Zach is at C San Pellegrino. Phil is I am at Phil Sorensen. I am at Six Wing Creative, and our boy Chris is at Chris of the Vast. And then we also have the podcast Twitter, which is Pop Culture Punks, and you can email us anything. I'll just say anything at this point. I don't like having
If
a
you
list.
want stickers,
If you want
just email
stickers,
us.
Just talk to
email
us.
If we get an email, you get a sticker.
You get a sticker.
Oh, do we have stickers with?
We
can
do
give
have
him-
stickers.
We got to give him
You
some of our
You
stickers.
could just send an email saying "I hate you" with a poop emoticon, and then we'll give you a
we'll
sticker.
we'll give you a sticker for anything.
Thanks for the
Poop
feedback.
emoji, yeah.
Yeah. And you can send those to popculturepunks@gmail.com. And we also
And-
have a Redbubble with some
Yeah.
merch. I had a fun. We were at Collectivo today and in Grafton, and the barista was like, "Oh, I like your shirt." I was like, "I'm actually on a podcast." So she was like, "Oh, I'll have to check it out." So she took a photo.
Let's
So,
go.
Oh,
Shout out
that's
to
very cool.
that gal at Collectivo.
By the way,
Represent.
T-shirt. I need a T-shirt.
Do you?
Just so you know.
Ooh.
Yes.
There we go. We got
Heck
another
yeah.
buyer.
Hey,
We should do that for guests from now on.
That would be nice.
something.
Yeah, we'll have to mass
So if
order
you want to be a
bunch.
guest, shoot us an email and we'll consider you.
and we'll give you a free T-shirt.
We'll consider if you're important enough.
Some
Yeah.
homeless guy comes in.
I just need a T-shirt.
Yeah.
your podcast?
And then also, what was your podcast again?
Cubic Shenanigans.
Cubic Shenanigans.
Yeah,
Check
yeah.
that out if you're.
And we are on iTunes. And
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
we do have a website. It's cubicshenanigans.net.
Sweet.
Cool,
And
cool.
it's board game, Warhammer.
Yeah, board game, miniatures, and whatever else we decide to talk about. But
Cool. Awesome. And with that is the end of this segment. We bid you all a fond cowabunga. We'll catch you next week.
Later.